We have some truly terrible people on today's list. History is full of real demons who ruined many lives. Luckily for us, most of the people on this list are from far back in history, but not all of them. So let's jump into the top 5 real people scarier than demons, part 2. Coming in at number 5, we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory is a name that you might not be familiar with, but did you know that she inspired the iconic character Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil Village? No, I didn't know this. This is amazing. Elizabeth was a countess and a member of the Bathory family. Her family were noble, wealthy, and powerful. Her uncle was the King of Poland and her nephew was the Prince of Transylvania. At the age of 11, she was considered a beautiful and well-educated girl and became engaged to Count Ferenc Nadasdy. There were rumors she mothered an illegitimate child before her marriage to another man, but this is believed to have been covered up by her family. At 15, she was married. The couple had their first child when she was 25. Elizabeth gave birth to 5 children with 2 daughters and a son surviving. Her husband was a soldier, so they spent the majority of their marriage apart. When her husband died in 1604, she took control of the estates. In 1610, Elizabeth was captured for her crimes. It came to light that she had been torturing both female servants and minor noble women who'd come to her for training and education. Most of her allegations of assault and taking lives took place after her husband passed in 1604. Her methods of torture were strange and varied. Some of them were covered in honey and left outside to be devoured by insects. During the cold parts of the year, young women would be stripped of their clothes and forced into ice baths. She would drive needles into their fingers, cut their noses and lips, or whip them with stinging needles. It was said she missed her youth and would bathe in the blood of the innocent in an attempt to recapture it. In December 1610, the Lord of Hungary arrived at her castle to investigate the claims of torture. He reported that he had surprised Elizabeth during the torment of a new victim. He immediately imprisoned her in her own home. Due to her noble birth, she was not able to be jailed as a common criminal. They continued to look into her crimes. Some of her servants were arrested for aiding her. One witness stated that there had been 650 victims listed in Elizabeth's papers. They were able to gain 289 witnesses' statements to her crimes. She was walled in her home until her death in 1614. Her assets then passed on to her family. She is said to have been the most prolific female murderer of all time. She has since been inspiration to many characters in popular media. Also, this point was suggested by viewer The Horned King, so thank you. In at number 4, we have Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960 in Wisconsin. He was an energetic and happy child until the age of 4 when he needed a surgery to correct a double hernia. This seemed to change him as a child. He became increasingly withdrawn from his family. When his younger brother was born, the family moved around frequently. By the time he was a teenager, he was disengaged with life. He was described as tense and was never friendly to those around him. When he was 14, he started having a compulsion to necrophilia. When his parents divorced, it was angry and bitter. This became the catalyst for turning his dark thoughts into actions. His alcohol consumption got out of control, he dropped out of college, and his father insisted that he enroll in the army. Dahmer enlisted in 1978 and was posted in Germany. He was discharged from the army in 1981 for his excessive drinking. The German authorities were also looking into his connection between Dahmer and some missing people in the area where he was posted. Dahmer was repeatedly arrested for his disorderly conduct connected to his drinking. It wasn't until later that his true crimes came to light. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer took the lives of 17 men. He often chose victims who were on the fringe of society, those who were borderline criminals so that their disappearances would be less noticeable. He lured his victims to his home by seducing them. He then took their lives and satisfied his necrophilia urges. He would also keep body parts and photos as souvenirs of his acts. Dahmer took his first life just after graduating high school. He did this at his parents' house and hid the evidence. While living with his grandmother, he took 3 more lives. She was unaware of this but kicked him out due to his late nights and heavy drinking. He was arrested and put on trial in 1989 for his encounter with an underage boy he claimed to think was much older. While on trial, he was still committing gruesome acts while pleading his innocence in court. He was let back into the world. It wasn't until 1991 that he was arrested for his brutal crimes and his terror came to an end. His pictures that he kept as souvenirs were found by the police. In 92, he was put on trial where he pleaded not guilty. He was then sentenced to 15 life sentences. In 1994, his life was taken by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver. In at number 3, we have David Berkowitz. David Berkowitz was born on June 1st in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. His mother was too poor to support him, so he was adopted at just a few days old by hardware store retailers Nathan and Per Berkowitz. He was a smart child but struggled as a teenager when his mother died. He had been close to her during his childhood. At the age of 18, he enlisted in the army and served in South Korea. He He finished his service in 1974 and got a job as a letter sorter for the Postal Service in New York and settled into an apartment in Yonkers. Neighbors and co-workers described him as a loner who kept to himself. He took his first life in 1976, starting his rampage. He attacked two young girls, Jody and Donna, in the Bronx. Jody was injured but survived the shooting. Within the next few months, he would shoot at two more couples either walking or sat in the car. His attacks were either fatal or left life-altering injuries. Police at the time had not connected these attacks and treated them as separate incidents. In 1977, the police made the connection, and when he shot at another couple parked in their car, they retrieved the bullets and connected he used the same gun in all attacks. They started calling him the .44 caliber killer. In the following months, he took 3 more lives, but this time he left a letter addressed to the NYPD. In the letter, he called himself the Son of Sam. Throughout his rampage, he left various letters taunting the NYPD. As a result, there was a massive media coverage. He loved the spotlight, and this only spurred him on more. New Yorkers live in fear, and it became the biggest manhunt that New York had ever seen. His capture came when he attacked again, and a witness noticed him driving away in his car that he had a parking ticket on. Only a handful of tickets were given out that day. They were able to link this back to Berkowitz. While in custody, he tried to blame his crimes on his dog, claiming that his pet was possessed and telling him to do it. After all of these attacks, he had taken 6 lives and wounded 9 others. Media outlets began to pay him to share the story. This led to a new law called Son of Sam laws that prevents criminals from profiting from their story. He was given 6 life sentences and had repeatedly been denied parole. He is currently 67 and in a facility in upstate New York. Coming in at number 2 with Albert DeSalvo. Albert DeSalvo was born in 1931 in Massachusetts. From an early age, he was in and out of trouble with the police, leading him to become the famous Boston Strangler. He has a rough upbringing with his 4 siblings. They struggled with their angry and aggressive father. He, like many others on this list, spent some time listed in the military, until he was discharged for disobeying orders. When he moved back home, he settled down and married Irmgard Beck. They lived modestly. His wife gave birth to a handicapped child, and Albert managed to sustain and provide for his family. He feared having a second child and fears they too would suffer as the first child did. They did eventually welcome a second child who was born fully able. He became a loving family man. His colleagues said he was an outrageous braggart. This led to the police not believing claims that he was the Strangler. Between 1962 and 64, a series of gruesome attacks took place across Boston. All of the victims were women who were strangled. The attacks were all blamed on one unknown sociopath. The case was surrounded by mystery. There were 13 victims claimed by the Strangler. DeSalvo was brought in for questioning for another crime. It was at this point that he confessed to being the Strangler. The police at first didn't believe him. They had different description that he didn't fit. His wife suggested he was confessing to get money from the papers for his story. While in prison, he did organize an interview. He had accepted that he would be in prison for the rest of his life and wanted his family to be taken care of. The interview shocked everyone when he went into details that no one else knew. It was at this point the police believed he was the Boston Strangler. One day he called his lawyer and said he had something he wanted to tell him about the crimes. He told him to meet him the next day to give him the information. He was attacked and passed away that night before he could tell the lawyer the details he wanted. After he passed, his DNA was taken and compared to evidence from one of the crimes. The DNA didn't match, meaning he didn't attack this girl but could have still been involved. Some think he is not the killer. His family still argue his innocence, but it's unclear how he knew all of the details if he was not involved with the crimes. We will never fully know what happened. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Hitler. I'm sure all of you are aware who Adolf Hitler is and what his crimes are, but for anyone who doesn't know, he deserves the number 1 position on this list more than anyone could. He was the 4th of 6 children. In his childhood, he clashed with his strict and unloving father. Adolf wanted to pursue a career in fine arts, but his dad disapproved of this. In 1900, Hitler's younger brother Edmund died. After this, he became detached from life and introverted. As he grew up, he began to show interest in the German nationalism ideals, rejecting the Austria-Hungary authority. This nationalism quickly became the motivating force in his life. His father died suddenly in 1903 and Hitler dropped out of college. His mother passed 2 years later. At this point in his life, he moved to Vienna and worked as a painter. He applied to the Academy of Fine Arts twice, but was rejected both times. He quickly ran out of money. He made little money from selling postcards. He spent a lot of his time staying in homeless shelters. Hitler later pointed to these years as when when he cultivated his anti-Semitism ideals. In 1914, he joined the German army to fight in World War I. He spent his time away from the front line but was present for some significant battles. He was awarded numerous times for his bravery in the war. He was shocked by the German surrender in 1918. Like other German nationalists, he believed the German army was betrayed by the civilian leaders and Marxists. In 1919, Hitler joined the DAP party and designed the party banner that became the world known for all the wrong reasons. He soon became known for his speeches against his rival party. In 1921, he replaced the party head. The rest we all know. His power grew until he had taken control of Germany. He built the concentration camps and performed mass executions. He is responsible for the deaths of 11 million people, including 6 million Jewish people. In 1945, he was about to be captured by enemy troops when he took his own life with poison. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Who on this list scares you the most? I mean, I think there's an obvious choice. Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 3. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, and until next time, I'll see you later. Luckily for us, most of the people on this list are from Jesus Christ. I was in speech therapy when I was younger. I had to say my F's a lot, so when I up now, it really takes me back to when I had to go Freddy the Firework and Sammy the Snake. Triggered. Luckily for us, most of the people on this list are my speech impediment's coming back. There were rumors she fathered an illegitimate child before her marriage to another man, but this mothered. Why would she father it? She mothered, right? There were rumors she mothered an illegitimate. Oh, and this. Yeah, sure. That's cool, I didn't know that. That name. Yonkers. His power grew until he had taken. Now I'm running out of time, it's stressing me out. What a bastard.